Mr. Polanco was a very nice gentleman, and he basically, you know, I remember his looking at me and shaking his head like, you know, it was, this is like a witch hunt, so to speak. He was not surprised that we had this problem, and he actually attributed it to maybe a disgruntled neighbor, because he asked me, you know, do you have anybody that's an enemy, or do you have a neighbor that's an enemy? And he just seemed to be sort of it was sort of an empathic kind of response from him. He understood the problems we were having, and he sort of conveyed the idea that he was sorry about it, and just shook his head and said, there's no wetlands here. You guys don't have any wetlands. But he understood why we could be facing a charge like this due to a disgruntled neighbor, and the fact that in Costa Rica it is very easy for someone to make a claim that's unsubstantiated, but then it gets the ball rolling on a denuncia process that could leave you in a legal quagmire for the next 15 years. So, but he seemed to, Mr. Polanco was a very nice guy. He seemed to relate to what we were going through.
Thank you. A series of questions was put to you about the marketing efforts in the aftermath of the financial crisis. You described a situation in which you said to Mr. Leithley that you were more successful than others in the area in making sales in a difficult market. Why were you more successful?
Well, I would say for a number of reasons, one of which was our project was very well located. It was a very attractive property on the beach. You know, on that coast coming from Jaco down to our property, some 25 minutes, is all flat wetland area. Then you hit Estorrillos, which is characterized by rolling hills. And then past Estorrillos, further south towards Capos, again you have flat, sort of wet terrain. So our property characteristics were very attractive, and we were very close to the city, within an hour and a half of San Jose and the airport. So, okay, we had superior location, for one. We also had a superior beach. It's many people's opinions that our beach is perhaps the nicest beach on the Central Pacific. Our water quality was higher than other beaches, like for instance Jaco Beach, which is one of their most developed beach towns. It's a beautiful beach, but you know, there's very marginal water quality. You have no central sewage system in Jaco, and there's all kinds of waste and debris that is seeping out to the beach, so we didn't have those issues. So for one thing, we had a superior location. Secondly, we had the best priced product on the Central Pacific. Mr. Avon is a very good businessman, unlike many of the competitors around our project who had gone belly up after the economic crash because they were in debt. We had no debt on the project, and we weren't, shackled by mortgage payments. So, and we had, Mr. Avon also did a very good job at buying the property at a good price. So we could afford at that time to come down in our pricing on our lots and still be profitable. Whereas other projects and even our projects before the crash, I think we sold a number of lots for 130 to 160,000. Many projects were at that level before the crash. When the crash came, people weren't paying 130 to 160,000 for lots anymore. So the projects that had debt and that were required to sell their properties at that level of pricing, they couldn't make it after the crash. But we were able to lower our prices, still make money, and address the new market that had come to be after the crash. We dropped our prices 50, 60%, and were able to meet the market and the demand. So that's another reason why we were successful. And I think another reason was that the buyers who purchased from us, my marketing efforts and my interactions with them, the buyers believed in me and the project, and I wanted to take care of these people. I wanted to give them something good.
Thank you. I have no further questions for you, Mr. Damjanac, but you're not finished yet. The members of the tribunal may have some further questions for you before we finish. Thank you, Mr. President.
Could you tell me how the profile of the 16 buyers that you had in your last year of lot sales? Is there a standard profile that you were looking at and found?
I would say a commonality among all of them were that they were probably in their early 50s, mid 40s. They were people that were going to be retired soon. They were looking for a place to retire to, a nice place at the beach. A lot of them weren't fully retired yet, but they anticipated to be retired, maybe 3 to 8 years later. And they were looking to buy the property and maybe build a house within a few years thereafter and come down to vacation as well as, retire someday. They were active people. They enjoyed the beach. They enjoyed surfing and the beauty and, the abundant nature of Costa Rica. They were also pretty savvy people. A lot of them were entrepreneurial backgrounds, and they had shopped quite extensively, and they knew the country, and they knew the different projects and areas. And after reviewing a number of different offerings, they chose to buy from us.
Did that profile change over time? You told me what it was in the last set of sales, but when you started your marketing efforts, was that your intended audience as well?
Yeah, I would say that was the audience. That was one of our main targets, yes. Mm-hmm.
Were most of the buyers financing this, or were they paying cash, or how was it?
Most were paying cash. Whether they were financing their purchase in the States through like a refinancing of their existing property up there or not, I can't say for sure. Maybe a few of them did, but I'd say the majority of them were paying cash.
So as part of your sales program, you did not have relationships with local banks, as some developments did, in order to encourage local financing?
No, bank financing in Costa Rica is hard, if not null. And bank rates in Costa Rica are much higher than those in the States and other countries. So, no, it's very difficult to get financing in Costa Rica. And when a buyer was a lot of private financing available, but then you're looking at rates of 14, 18%. And when a lot of our educated buyers from up north came to the property, they weren't about to pay those kinds of rates. So we at times offered financing, in-house financing to people with enough money down.
I have a question that may or may not fall within the ambit of your specialization. You will tell me whether it is or not, and whether or not you can answer. At some point during the process, it has been said that sometimes foreigners acquire an enterprise that has a concession in a maritime terrestrial zone, and they appoint a Costa Rican national as temporary holder of 51% of the shares. And perhaps there is no purchase by the Costa Rican, but the Costa Rican is merely providing a service. Situations such as this, are they assessed by the office you head? And what Costa Rican law would govern in cases such as this? Yes, they are assessed by, by my office. And I would like to explain that by law concerning these areas, we are the legal controller of compliance of the Maritime Terrestrial Zone law. We have a special mandate for that, and we have has issued many opinions about it, including accept criteria such as this. When I say criteria, it is because we play a double role. The Office of the Attorney General is the superior advisory organ for public administration, and it issues criteria that are binding for public administration when it seeks the opinion of the Attorney General, and it defends the state in the administrative litigation. When I say the state, I mean central government. In this advisory role, it has issued many opinions from municipalities when they consult matters having to do with the maritime terrestrial zones. And one has been this topic, and the office has said that this practice is what is called a legal fraud. In other words, using a legal procedure, what they are doing is evading from something set forth in a different law. And what's happening here is that there are Costa Ricans who act as trustees for others in order to ensure that the right number of shares are held by Costa Rican, allowing foreigners to have concessions that pursuant, or foreign companies rather. Foreign companies can have concessions when the law for the maritime terrestrial zone expressly indicates a percentage shareholding, that 51% has to be held by Costa Rican in order to be a concessionaire. That is a way of avoiding that law. It's by using this mechanism. So I give shares to Costa Ricans who obviously have absolutely nothing to do with the activity that's being carried out in the concession. They're not involved. They just lend their name for the operation. And this is a legal fraud. This has been pointed out to the municipalities because this is a criterion used by our office. Do you know whether a similar matter has been questioned or reviewed by Costa Rican courts? No, sir. I couldn't tell you if there has been a case brought before a tribunal in which this has been discussed.
Ms. Vargas, could you go to paragraph 52 of your report? I'll read the text. It's just 2 sentences. You say, as part of their D1 submission, the claimant submitted a geotechnical engineering report prepared by Technocontrol SA, the Technocontrol report. And you then footnote 45. You continue on page 14 of the same report. There is evidence of bodies of water which are protected under Costa Rican law. Now, looking down at footnote 45, you will agree with me, won't you, that it refers to R13 and then has the text complete D1 form for condominium site, November the 8th, 2007. You agree with that?
Sí, señor.
Yes, sir.
In the file in front of you, can you go behind tab 2? You will see a copy of exhibit R13. Within that exhibit, I'd like you to go to the Techno Control report to which you refer. Now, if you look in the top right-hand corner, you'll see it's not very clear, but there are stamped page numbers. I'd like you to find, it's probably about 20 pages in, the page numbered 000187. So if you see at the top right hand corner of each page, look at the pages. There are some not very clear numbers. If you could just find page 000187.
And mine, at least, is numbered back to front. So
right.
187 is the beginning of the report.
You have it?
Sí, señor.
Yes, sir.
Very simple question. Could you just read the addressee, or sorry, the addressee of this report, starting with the word señor near the top?
Mauricio Mucio.
Mauricio Mucio.
Thank you. And below that?
Proyecto en
Project in Playa Chamán in Punta Ballena.
So this document is not about the Las Olas project, is it?
A mí me parece que sí.
I think it does refer to it, even though the geographic reference is wrong.
This, apologies. I put it to you, this is not a document that relates to the Las Olas project. You didn't contact Setena to discuss the environmental viability permits that they issued in respect to the project, did you?
Correcto.
Correct.
So you are not aware, are you, that in 2004 Setena issued an EV covering the entire project, include the condominium and the easement section? You're not aware of that, are you?
Esa no es
That's not the whole project. The whole project, even if that were the case, includes commercial lots that are not described in the scope you mentioned.
Apologies for interrupting, but you're wasting time by not answering the question. You are not aware, are you, that in 2004 Setena issued an EV covering the condominium and easement section, are you? Yes or no?
Sí.
Yes.
Thank you. And Setena, nobody from Setena is before us in these proceedings, are they?
Correcto.
Correct.
Okay. I have no further questions, sir.
I have a question. The Claimants Council asked you to look at the report that appears from page 000187, and I'm referring here to tab 2. This is an annex of Exhibit R13. And this is the reference showing that this report is addressed to architect Mauricio Mucio, but it refers to a different project, not the Las Olas one. Have you got it before you? Could you tell me what the relevance of this is? Help me understand. But how did you come to that conclusion that this one actually does correspond to the project? What is it that induces you to believe that it is in fact this project that it refers to? I'm looking at some pages further into the document. For instance, page 174, 000174. And even the plan for the site looks different. Well, more or less. It's a terrible map. I won't argue that. It's quite shameful. It's a very poor, very bad map. But if you look at the upper portion, you can see a wide street that seems to say Carretera Costanera, which is the name of the main road between Jaco and Quepos, and it is the road that is adjacent to the northern part of the Las Olas sector. And in the southwest, there is another smaller road with some limited access, and it looks very similar to what we have seen in the context of Las Olas. I get the impression that it is this project. However, none of the conclusions that I pointed out changes in any way based on this report. But it's simply that. It's your impression that it refers to this project. There's nothing in this document. Well, I cannot prove that it was conducted on the site. There is no clarification by the Las Olas developers that this is a mistake either. So I assume if they didn't correct it, then this is the right document in the file, and I find that it is consistent with what we see on the site, although we're not going to query the poor quality of the map.
You made the comment in response to one of Council's questions earlier about the difficulties that come from complaints being made against development properties in Costa Rica. Are you aware of other such complaints affecting other properties?
No, absolutely. Many such complaints.
Would you give me a brief description, just for comparison?
Oh, well, you know, I know there's one gentleman by the name of Sheldon Hazeltine who actually, he's in the newspaper today down there, amcostarica.com, and he is sort of spearheading a whole movement in Costa Rica to seek justice for people that have been projects that have been shut down. His project was shut down, and then he had a bunch of squatters on his land, which seemed to have been that whole squatter situation, Sheldon Hazeltine claims, was orchestrated by some not so nice, powerful, rich people down there. I believe there was one project in northern Guanacaste which was owned by a gentleman named James Salter from CMI Construction, and he was doing a project called Canyon Ranch. Canyon Ranch is a big high-end luxury resort, holistic health and wellness type resort, and he had spent a lot of money and gotten approvals for his project, and started building, and then he got shut down by the authorities. I believe there's another project revolving around a gold mine that was given the concession to mine gold, and then afterwards the gold mine was closed down by the government. I believe there's a wealth of information on the there was a company named Millicom. I mean, you'd have to like research this yourselves. I'm not absolutely completely positive of all of the things that happened in that case, but for instance, Millicom came into Costa Rica. They created infrastructure for telecommunications with the anticipation that they would be able to make money in that market, and after they completed their infrastructure, Costa Rica kicked them out of the country. And then at one point Costa Rica was looking for some financing from the World Bank, and Millicom had lobbied with the bank, and Costa Rica allowed Millicom to come back into the country and to continue operations. Costa Rica received a loan from the World Bank, and then shortly thereafter Costa Rica kicked Millicom out of the country again. If you do a Google search, I'm sure you'll find dozens of instances where people profess grievances against the government of Costa Rica regarding business practice.
Has this pattern that you've been describing been going on a long time?
Yeah, I believe it has. Yeah.